All right, welcome class. This is the second unit of the year that we're going to study, and this unit is about functions. So functions are one of the most important concepts in algebra, so we're going to start small with just defining a function. So before we can better understand what a function is, we're going to look at what a relationship is. Now in math, a relationship is a connection between at least two quantities. So here we have relationship. Now, some examples, the number of hours you work and the amount of money you make. That there's a relationship between those two things. If you make more money or if you work more hours, then you're going to make more money. Or similarly, if you work less hours, then you're going to make less money. Now, another relationship could be between the amount of calories you consume and how much weight you gain or lose. Now, if you consume more calories, then you might gain weight, or if you consume less calories, you might lose weight. Now, there's are other factors at play there. That's why it says at least two quantities, but there's definitely a relationship between those two things. So when we look at these relationships, each quantity can be just called a variable because these numbers can change. So we have the dependent variable and we have the independent variable. The independent variable is what stands by itself. It's the number of hours you work. It isn't affected by anything else. The dependent variable is what changes in response to the independent variable. So we're going to have the dependent variable here and the independent variable here. So if you think about the money analogy, the dependent variable is going to be how much money you make. It depends on how many hours you work. Much hours you work is the independent variable. It stands by itself. It's not dependent on anything else. Unlike the amount of money you make depends on how many hours you work. So if we scroll down a little bit, we see that the independent variable is the input. It's what goes into the function. Whereas the dependent variable is the output. It depends on the independent variable. Now, a function is a relationship that pairs each input with exactly one output. Now, this exactly one is important because otherwise it's not a function. If you make $6 an hour and you work 10 hours, you're going to make $60. Every time you work 10 hours, you make $60. That's exactly one output for the input of 10 hours. Now, if sometimes when you work 10 hours you made $60 and sometimes you made $70 and sometimes you made $80, that's not going to be a function. So we can think of functions in a lot of different ways. One way is written. So on the left-hand side, we're going to have things that are functions, and on the right-hand side, things that are not functions. So if we look at written functions, we can think of an arcade machine. For each dollar you put in, you get 10 tokens. Now, it's a function because it's reliable. Every time you put in a dollar, you get 10 tokens. You're not sometimes getting 15 tokens or sometimes getting 20 tokens. If you put in a dollar, you get 10 tokens. Now, what's not a function would be a slot machine. Every time you pull, you get different amounts of money. So you put in $1 for a pull, sometimes you get $5, sometimes you get 10, you might hit the jackpot. So this is not a function because there are more than one output for the one input, which is putting the dollar in and getting a pull. Now, if we look at tables and mapping diagrams, on the left, we have an input of 1, which has an output of 7. So the relationship is if you put an input of 1, you're going to get 7 out. Similarly, if you have an input of 2, you're going to get 10 out, or if you have an input of 3, you're going to get 13 out. Now this is a function because each input only has one output. If we look on the right, our input is always 1, but sometimes we get 3 out, sometimes we have an output of 5, sometimes we have an output of 4. This is not going to be a function because we have more than one arrow coming out of the 1. So not reliable, not a function. Finally, a function can be expressed as a graph. we have a time and temperature graph on the left, and as you can see, as time goes across, the temperature gets bigger. Now this is a function because for any input, there's only going to be one output dot ahead of it. When we have 10, it's going to be around 70 degrees. When it's 15, it's going to be around 68 degrees, and so on. So at any one time, it can't be more than one temperature. Now on the other hand, we have this number and color graph. Now this is not going to be a function. If we look at number 1, we have one that's blue and one that's red. So we have two outputs for the one input, which is 1, not a function. Similarly, we can look at 4. We have one input or one output that's green and one output that's red. This is not going to be a function. In order for it to be a function, there would only be one color associated with each number. Now don't get exactly one output confused with exactly one input. An output can have as many inputs as we wanted. As we see over here in the time and temperature diagram, it's the same temperature at around 10 as it is around 12. This is okay. Functions are allowed to be straight lines as long as each input only has exactly one output. That's what it takes to be a function, not the other way around. So I hope you can better understand this. Good luck with your lesson today, and have a good day.